Hello, everyone. We're going to do our grace after meals that I just passed out. So if you want to follow along, you can. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We give you thanks, Almighty God, for all your benefits. World without end. Amen. May the souls of the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen. God bless the cook and all the volunteers that make this meal possible. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And just I'd like everybody to give a round of applause to yourselves for bringing the potluck. It's turned out really well. Thank you. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
I like it.
Does this microphone work? Great. You want to use this one? Or? Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you to Bobby and Bailey for setting this up. This is great. My name is Mike Marino. I'm a parishioner here, and I walk the Camino Santiago in September and October timeframe. We need to turn that down a little bit.
For you, Mike.
Okay, I'm done.
I'm going to clap for Amy, though, too.
And Amy Kavanaugh is a teacher at Levy Price, part-time art teacher, right? And she did the Camino as well. She's about 10 days behind me. We didn't walk it together. We did know we were walking it, and we kind of talked a little bit beforehand and things like that, communicated while we're on the trail. So that was an interesting experience. So I just want to say that between us, we have well over 2,000 pictures. This is a 5 to 6 week trip, so we're not going to cover everything tonight. We're going to kind of give everybody a little taste of it, and then we have a couple of short videos to show you, and then Amy and I will each describe our Camino, because everybody's Camino is different. And then we'll open it up for questions. So I hope everybody has lots of questions. I'm happy to sit down with anybody. I know there's a couple of people here that are seriously thinking about it, going to walk the Camino. I'd be happy to sit down and talk with anybody, go over more stuff. Anybody wants to, I'm happy to do that. We cover everything. Okay. So when we say the Camino de Santiago, that is the way of St. James. That's what Camino de Santiago means. It's a pilgrimage to the tomb of St. James, which is in Santiago de Compostela. But the route that we walked is just one of several routes that can be taken to it. You can see this map of Spain shows all the different routes. The green one is going across the northern part is the Francais, the French way, which is what Amy and I walked. It's called the French way because it actually starts in France. And then we both continued on a little bit. I walked to Murcia and then Finisterre, which is on the coast. And that's actually the end of the Camino, is actually on the coast. But again, there's several other different routes. So the French way is the most common route. Thousands of people walk it every year. They have statistics that they keep and everything that you can look up, but it's pretty amazing the number of people that actually do it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to that, with the Camino Frances, it being the most popular of all the routes, it's also the most well-supported. So if you had any doubt in your mind, like, oh, I don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere, you don't need to walk very far before coming into a small village or a small town where you would have access to water or food or a place to stop and pray or whatnot. Also with Camino Frances, I was just recently learned that 20 years ago, there was only 75,000, that's a lot of people, 75,000 people did the way. That was 20 years ago. In 2024, 500,000 people did it. So there is a great revival of faith going on around the world. And this is the way to bring people in to grow in their faith. I just wanted to add that.
Yes. And just to let you know, there are some saints that have walked away. Queen St. Isabel of Aragon has walked it, St. Bridget of Sweden, St. Dominic of Guzman, and it's believed that St. Francis walked it as well, but there's a little controversy as to whether that's true or not. But there are plenty of places where they say he stayed here and things like that.
So the place that you start, if you were interested in going on something like this, you generally fly into a larger city. I flew into Barcelona. Mike flew into Madrid, and from there they provide trains to one of the larger cities, which is called Pamplona. I don't know if you can see it up there on the map. It's a little bit blurry. Maybe Mike can. Yes, so you can take a train from Madrid to Pamplona, which is a pretty nice sized city. And from there, you would take a bus that only runs once a day. Or you can hire a taxi that would take you to the starting point of the Camino Frances for the Pyrenees Mountains. So you're actually starting in France. You're in the base of the Pyrenees Mountains in a small village. And that is where you would get yourself oriented and figure out what your plan is going to be as far as walking it. There's a lot of big cities along the way. There's quite a few larger cities along the way, which are helpful in some ways because you may run out of something, and so then you would have those larger cities. But the beauty of the larger cities lies in the history. It's medieval times, so you'll see a lot of different architecture, a lot of beautiful cathedrals. You'll meet a lot of the people that live in the different regions, which from region to region, it changes, starting with over near France, it's the Basque region, and then you move into the La Rioja region. I'm not sure, don't really speak Spanish, so I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that. But that's a huge region of wine growing and agriculture. And then Castile, and then you get into the Galicia region, which is where Santiago is in Sarria. So you're actually walking through many different terrains and many different agricultural regions. So you see a lot of animals and wildlife and all that. Yeah.
So when people say they walk the Camino, there is an official walking of the Camino to get the Compostela, which is your official certificate that you finished the Camino. There are 3 modes of transportation to do the Camino. You can walk it, and you have to walk a minimum of 100 kilometers. You can ride a bike, and the minimum is 200 kilometers. Or you can take a horse, ride a horse. And again, it's 200 kilometers for a horse. Sarria is the city that is the major city that's the closest to the 100-kilometer point. So after Sarria, it gets kind of crowded because a lot of people are coming into Sarria and just doing the tail end of it. So you ask for or get a credential, which is this document that you get beforehand, and it lists your name and where you're starting and all that kind of stuff. And as you go, each place you stop, you want to get a stamp. So you can see that this passport or this credential has, I actually have a couple of these because I filled this one up. Each place you get a stamp. You have to get at least one stamp every day, and they say from Sarria on you should get at least 2 stamps a day just to be sure. And then when you arrive in Santiago, you take your document to the Pilgrim office there, and they ask you a couple of questions, and then you get your official certificate with your name on it, suitable for framing. And you also can get a document that says how many miles or how many kilometers you walked. So the Frances is 779 kilometers. That's about 480 miles. And typically takes about 30 days. My walking plan was 33 days. This picture, I don't know if you can see it very well, that's Keiko from Japan. She did it by unicycle. I don't know how many kilometers you got to do by unicycle. The other thing I noticed with the bikes, a lot of people riding e-bikes, and I don't know that they don't do any differentiation between the minimum for a regular bike and an e-bike. To me, there ought to be. But I've seen a lot of contraptions. I saw one guy that had one that was with a car, and he must have had 6 additional batteries because he had his family with him as well.
I saw a guy pulling a suitcase, and he was pulling that suitcase the entire way. And I'm not sure why or what he had in his suitcase. I never met him, but I saw him several times throughout the weeks that I was there. And he was carrying that, instead of a backpack, he was rolling a suitcase. And the terrain is so varied on this trail that it's just remarkable that he was even able to do that. So, yeah. Okay, the first stop, when you arrive in Saint-Jean-de-Port, which is in France, sometimes there's a line. The line can go for a block or two to come into this office where you are seated with somebody that speaks your language. Because people do this from all over the world, there may only be 1 or 2 English-speaking people in there. And then they sit down with you and they ask you how they can help you and in what information you might need for as far as where to stay, where to eat, places you need to avoid. And they basically it's kind of your starting point. And this is where you actually get your pilgrimage card. You can also get this through the American Pilgrims of Camino. If you're interested, just speak with me. But yeah, this is very interesting because most of the people that work here, they're all doing this out of volunteering for their love of the Camino and of the way and sharing that. And so they do everything they can to help you to feel comfortable to start your journey, which generally begins the next day.
And the other thing that's important that they do is, again, the weather conditions change. You're going to go up through the mountains, and you're going to go through valleys. There are some areas that maybe are closed, and they'll tell you can't go that way, or you're going to have to go this way. So it's a good place to get up-to-date information on the trail, because you're going to be walking it for the next 5 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, they have, when you start out in France, there's 2 ways to go. There's a way that, I don't want to say it's the easy way, because neither of them are easy. But there's a way that goes around the mountain, and then there's a way that goes over the mountain. The most scenic and most beautiful, breathtaking is going over the Pyrenees Mountains. It's also the most difficult, physically challenging. So, that's,
Did both of you do that?
I did the Pyrenees, yeah. I did it with Val over here. She also was with me for 10 days in the Camino, my very, very close friend. And yeah, we walked together over the Pyrenees. I also had a cousin that I was with, but because everybody walks at a different pace, you really need to make it your own thing. So you don't want to keep up with anybody. You want to do your own walks. So this is the navigational signs for the Camino, and they're all over the Camino. Did you go too far? Okay, so this is what you're looking for when you're walking on the Camino. It's marked by these either yellow arrows or these cement markers. And this pilgrim's shell is there always on the side. And some people call them duck prints. But this is what you look for as you're walking. And this one, Mike showed me the other day, it was actually like a hologram that was cast off at church in the morning. Speaking to these arrows, this is how you figure out where you are, even in some of the big cities, because as you're going through these big, large cities of 150 to 200,000 people, all of a sudden you're in Grand Rapids. It's like, oh my gosh, where is that yellow arrow? And there's cars and trucks and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, God provides. I had many God moments when I'm like, okay, Lord, you better show me that yellow arrow, because I don't know where I am and I've lost that yellow arrow. And I'll be walking and there's the yellow arrow, and it's usually painted on like either a signpost, could be washed away, but it was always there for me. And it was really a great sense of comfort, actually.
Right. Quick question. If that's 100 kilometers, how come it took you 3 weeks?
Because I'm a slow walker.
Also, those, oh no, he didn't show that. Sorry.
I do want to mention real quick that the shell is another part of the Camino. This actually marks a pilgrim. So if somebody has the shell on their backpack or on them, that indicates they're doing this as a pilgrimage. I wouldn't say everybody's doing it as a pilgrimage and the shell, but that's the reason that the shell is so common. It's also associated with St. James as well.
It's,
And then these other markers, again, when you're out in the rural areas, the concrete posts and the signs are pretty common as your markers. When you get into the city, it's more the yellow arrows that are painted on different things. A lot of the cities have these different markers in the sidewalks where the trail is. They make them unique for their own towns and things like that. So if you're seeing a shell on the ground, you're probably in the right place. So you can follow that. But to be honest with you, I had an app. For that. But there are several apps out there, and you put your location on, and it tells you when you're on the trail and when you're off the trail. Because there are times where you have an alternate route, you can go a couple of different ways. So you want to know which one you're getting on. And that's probably the most helpful way. But you still get lost.
Yeah, that is the one thing I would speak about that also, is having those apps. There's two really good ones that they could pretty much, if you followed your phone and never looked up, you could probably get to where you needed to go. But I don't know about you, Mike, but I turned my phone off frequently during the day, and I think Val was upset with me a few times because she couldn't get a hold of me, and because I kind of wanted to disconnect. That's the whole purpose of going, is disconnecting from that technology, but it also is a great source of comfort. So
Yeah, and people will help you out. I mean, there was one time I was walking and I wasn't paying attention and I heard somebody go, "Hey!" And I just kept walking and it's, "Hey!" And it's like, oh, the guy up in the balcony's like, "Muchas gracias." So the terrain, as Amy said, the terrain that you walk, any kind of trail that you can possibly think of, you're probably going to walk on the Camino Frances. There's paved, you're sometimes walking along the road, there's sometimes sidewalks in the cities, there's gravel trails, there are dirt trails through the woods, there are farm trails through farms, you're walking through vineyards, through people's farms, through parks, you're walking down rain gullies. This center picture, the crevices in that trail are probably 1.5 feet deep in some places. Very rocky things. This other trail gets very thin going up between these walls. That's the trail right there. And again, because you're walking through rural areas, farmland, sometimes you have to share the trail with some animals. I was walking in these, a woman was leading one cow and all these others were following behind. It was really funny because there were 2 by 2 coming down the trail and I'm like, ugh. But as they got closer to me, they all went single file and just walked past me. I was so used to seeing people on the trail. There was another time when I was walking and a bunch of horses started coming my way. And same thing, they just kind of got off to the side and walked past and didn't think much of me. There was one sign I came across which was interesting because it warned about boars. I couldn't read the Spanish, but I could tell it's a boar picture. It's like, I don't read about that in any of the books. But there are wild boars out there. I've had 2 women tell me that boars ran right past them on the trail, which was kind of interesting. It's a little scary, but I think the boar was more scared of them.
I didn't see any boars, but there are a lot of cats. There are a lot of cats in Spain until you get to the Galicia region, which is the northwest end of Spain. Then you have dogs and big dogs, and they are just laying on the road, and you will be walking right by them. And they don't seem really aggressive. I never had an issue with aggressive dogs, but there's a lot of dogs and a lot of cats. Okay, so these are the different types of places that you can stay when you're walking on the way. And the albergue is probably the most popular way to go. And those would be shared bunk beds, and they're usually either in they could be in a monastery even, or a convent. I didn't stay in either of them. But you have, Mike can speak to that top one because I was not there. But they have a little bit of privacy, but usually have a shared bathroom. So don't worry about, and we're all human beings, that's the only way I can say it. Because when you're with people, you may have a male on the bottom and a female on the top, unless you request an all-female albergue. You will be put in with co-ed albergues. There's also something called a pension, where you can just have a bed that went up in the corner. And that's where if you want a little privacy, or if you just wanted to share with one other person, sometimes they have the 2 beds. I stayed in a lot of pensions because my cousin, who I was walking most of it with, did not want to stay in a lot of albergues. She really appreciated her privacy. So they were usually right next to the albergues where you had 3 or 4 beds to a room. And then you could also do a hotel. If you needed a hotel, which every 4 or 5 days, a hotel is very, very nice. Because some nights you're taking cold showers because that's just the way it is in Spain. Sometimes the hot water doesn't work. And it's just not really comfortable. You want a good night's sleep. So you splurge and pay 50 euros, which is not bad at all, for a hotel. Let's see. Usually in the albergues, they have a community meal And that is usually offered in the evening after everybody arrives. Whoever owns the alberche usually would tell everybody that dinner is served at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. after Mass. Usually Mass, the Pilgrims Masses were in the evening. So it either be before or after the Masses. And all the people come down who are also traveling from all over the world and staying in that alberche would have dinner with you. So you may be sitting next to a German on your right and a French on your left and a Korean on your across from you. And that is the beauty of the Camino. It's just amazing international pilgrimage. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so as far as the albergues go, you could be in a room with 300 people, or you can be in a room with 50 other people. It just depends on how they're set up. You usually get some information on the app as to what type of facilities are in whatever city, how much it costs, what they offer. So again, sometimes they offer a meal, sometimes that's an extra cost, sometimes it's included. But they're typically either private, municipal, run by the city, or parochial, run by the church. So there are some times where there's hosts that are nuns or priests, brothers, or things like that, hosting some of these, and other times they're run by the city, and the city ones tend to be much bigger and much more modern. The one that was the capsule one, I wanted to stay in one of those to see what it's like. You kind of get your own little capsule, you can close the curtain and have your light in there and your power in there, you can just separate yourself. Well, really hold questions at the end if I could. Could I please? Okay. And then the hotels, again, the only thing I will say, if anybody decides to do this, the one hotel on the bottom, which I got on Burgos, booking.com said it was €75 a night. I just went there and asked them themselves, and they said it's $50. So sometimes it's a little cheaper if you actually just go up and ask.
You don't need a sleeping bag, by the way. That is not something you need to bring. Even the alberches have bedding to lay on and blankets. Did you need a sleeping bag?
Yeah, there are some that say
okay.
there are some that say you need to have a sleeping bag. They typically will provide you with paper or disposable sheets to cover the mattress and the pillow. You don't have to take your own pillow; there'll be pillows. But they generally want you to have a sleeping bag. Most of them will have blankets if you need them, but I did go to some that didn't have any blankets. So if you're cold, and I went to some that really didn't have heat either, but I went to the cheaper ones, I guess. Okay, we want to talk about this.
So the food that you eat is, Spanish in origin unless you're bringing something. I mean, you could bring protein bars and things like that, but generally a typical meal would be something like up in the corner here, this bordilla, which is a hard, crusty bread, and inside there's salami or ham, a lot of ham. They eat a lot of ham in Spain. And so that's what that would be, and that would be even for breakfast sometimes. And then coffee, I will attest to coffee because I'm kind of a coffee snob. It is really good coffee. I never had a bad cup of coffee in Spain. There's like a roll that they serve. It's kind of a cakey type of bread that they serve in the morning. Or you would have like a quiche kind of, it's like egg or something on that order. Those were kind of the breakfast places. There were places along the route where people would make their own food and serve it. I actually had the experience of walking into this one area where this guy set up an entire meal. I'm sure you were there. They had fruits and soup and just everything you could imagine. It was donative. It was just by donation. And he was just wanted you to make sure that you were sustained on your walk. So, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of times when we walk into town, the bars is typically where you're going to find food. Bars are bars, but they also have espresso makers. They all serve coffee in the morning. Usually open very early. They'll serve you a drink at that time too. They serve drinks 24 hours a day if they're open. So But typically a bar, when people say bar, they will have the whole bar, but have food, and they'll have some breakfast items, some more than others, but typically it's a pretty light breakfast unless you go to a restaurant.
So speaking to that really quickly, while you might be thinking, well, where do you go to the bathroom? It's those bars. You go in and buy a cup of coffee and then you can use the restrooms. Generally, that's where the restrooms are. Yeah, and when you get into town, they have all level of food too. When you get into some of the bigger towns, you can eat at a 5-star restaurant, or you can walk into not a McDonald's, but Burger King and Burgos.
So Amy mentioned the donativas. The donativas, people will set these up in their driveway. Some people will set up big stands. Some will set up extremely complicated type systems like the lower right, which had places you could take a nap if you wanted to. They had every kind of food you could think of, fresh food, nuts, pastries, coffee, tea, anything. It was all by donation. You can pay what you want to pay. This one on the upper right is what somebody had just in their driveway. They had a little keg of wine there. They had some coffee and some pastries and things like that. This other one on the right is one that was hosted by a Protestant church from Texas, where they had coffee and things like that. Wanted people to come in and rest a little bit. They had a map where people could mark where they were from and things like that. It was a great place to stop and chat for a little bit. Very friendly people, and these are just like little blessings as you come along, because they always seem to pop up when you really need one. Want a fresh piece of fruit or something like that. The other thing that was interesting is doing a little scavenging. We walked in the fall, so there were a lot of crops that were coming in. There was like a week where it was like a food of the day for me. So I came across almond trees, so I had some almonds. I came across a walnut tree, I had some walnuts. Fig trees, grapes, peaches, apples. These are all things that we found along the way, and grabbed a bite while I was there. I saw people mushroom hunting too out there. I didn't try that. I don't know my mushrooms well enough to do that. I don't know if those are poisonous or not, but there were people out there mushroom hunting as well.
Okay, so this is what I was talking about in your communal dinners when you check into one of these El Braches. Generally, people come down and talk about their day and where they're from, and it's just a wonderful way to meet other people and to share in or commiserate in your walk for the day. And they generally serve a bottle or two of wine. It was every single night that I stayed in those, they always had wine, red wine. And then always a meal where you're actually really, really sustained. The one in the middle is the paella, which I brought tonight. Typically that's made with seafood. I never had any with seafood. Did you have any paella? Okay, so I'm not a seafood lover, but there was a lot of seafood there. And then again, ham and French fries. So I didn't find a lot of fresh vegetables. I will say that, and I thought it was very interesting, thinking with all this agriculture that there would be fresh salads that they would offer. They just don't eat that in Spain, not in the small villages or towns.
And what I heard is they don't serve it at restaurants, but at homes they eat a lot of fresh vegetables, because a lot of people have gardens in their backyards and things, so they certainly grow the stuff.
Well, I was told historically that when the country was very poor, the people had to eat vegetables, and as they become more wealthy, they could eat meat. So meat is what is served there. That's a sign of wealth. Yeah, but French fries too, and they didn't serve them with ketchup. I hate it. That's an American thing. It would just be like this delicious steak, and then they'd give you French fries, and that's it. But that was very, very typical. And tuna, large amounts of tuna were served, which was actually very good. There's calamari. What is this on the bottom here? It's fish. So
And so with the, most of the restaurants will serve either a pilgrim meal or a menu of the day, which typically is a 3-course where you get choices for each course, set price, and typically these are 9 to 15 euros, so a pretty cheap meal. They also give you a choice of wine, and if you choose wine, they just give you a whole bottle. Or beer or a water. If you choose water, you get a big 2-liter bottle of water. But you usually get like a salad, some kind of an appetizer type thing, a main dish, and then a choice of desserts. And so it's very filling. I actually didn't do very many of these. It was too much food for me. I didn't have that much of an appetite while I was walking, believe it or not. It just was too much. Certainly the wine was too much.
Yeah, this dish actually, now that we're still on food here, the tomatoes, they covered it in olive oil. I've never had this before. My tuna always has to have mayonnaise and celery and onion. This is just fresh tuna. They covered it in balsamic vinegar and olive oil over tomatoes. It was absolutely delicious, and I'm sure good for you. So, and that looks like calamari on the top. Yeah, and the bottom picture is my cousin. We came into a town, and you can eat outside, which is really nice because the weather is so nice in October. Most of the time you can eat outside. So we sat out and had ourselves a nice dinner. The cheeses, they, depending on what region you're in of Spain, they serve different types of foods. So I'm not sure what region this picture was taken in, but that looks like a manchego cheese. It's usually a hard cheese with grapes and the Bordilla. But you can also get your food at markets. I had several days where I was just sick of pulling out the card and paying for food. I'm like, I'm going to a supermarket and I'm just gonna buy some things. So I would buy like cheese and crackers and things that I knew were gonna somewhat stay stable. They don't have peanut butter over there, just to let you know that. And then at night, you just open your window and you put your food on the ledge and it stays cold. So, and then I just would eat it during the day.
And a lot of the supermarkets have a lot of ready-to-eat, already cooked meals and things like that, so you can just buy it. That one on the left is one I kind of put together from the store with some. I always said all you need is a hunk of bread, a hunk of salami, and some olives and wine, and you're good to go. So interesting things we saw on the Camino, just to kind of highlight a couple of things. So the upper left is a family, husband and wife, and their 3 young daughters. The youngest is probably 3 years old. He had kind of a cart he was harnessed to that he was pulling, and so the 3-year-old was probably back there most of the time. But there was another family I saw. It was actually 3 generations: the grandparents, the parents, and the kids all walking the Camino together. Pretty amazing. The center picture is a guy who is passed by, who's walking it in wooden shoes. The lower left is Fuente de Vino, which is the wine fountain. It's a monastery that has a fountain out there. It's got 2 fountains, one's water, one's wine. So you can stop and get a sip. I was there like 8 o'clock in the morning, so I had a sip. But 100 liters a day they put out, and that's kind of their limit. Not the greatest wine, but kind of a nice treat. The upper left is inside a cathedral. That's a chicken coop. There's 2 live chickens in there. And it's Santo Domingo Cathedral, and there's a story behind that. There's a legend of a family who was going on a pilgrimage to Santiago, and the boy got set up that he stole something, so he was tried and convicted and hung. When his parents were coming back, he was still alive and hanging there. And so they went to tell the mayor that, hey, the boy's still alive, and the mayor was having chicken for dinner, and he said, if that boy's alive, then this chicken's alive. and the chicken grew feathers and came back to life. So that's the legend. So that's why there's chicken coop in a cathedral in Santiago, Santo Domingo. The other picture is from Oseguero, which is where a Eucharistic miracle occurred in this church. It's written up in the booklet in the Adoration Chapel, but it's a priest who didn't believe in the real presence. He was going to do a mass, and it was a terrible storm. He didn't think anybody would show up, but this farmer showed up, and because he was doubting, the host turned into real flesh, and wine turned into blood. So they have that on display there in the church itself. So never didn't realize that was even there when I went, to be honest with you. So pretty interesting.
That church also has a chapel that St. Francis, he stayed quite a while in Sparrow, and his chapel is there, and it's all lined in candles, and it's phenomenal, beautiful, just beautiful, very holy place. Okay, so these are some of just a couple of interesting things. We saw quite a few of these. This big picture right here, this was in the morning, and I couldn't figure out what they were because they were up on stilts and they had no ladder to get up there. Most of them had crosses on either side, so I'm like, there's gotta be some spiritual significance. Well, I met somebody that was from Spain, and he told me they're called Oreos, and they're actually like corn cribs, and the farmers use them to store the corn to keep the mice out. So they're all along the way, and they are all in different shapes and patterns, and some are very ornate and some are very simple, but I just thought they were quite interesting to look at. The other thing that I always was interested in the architecture of the different houses and the buildings as I walked by, and this building was just hand built by stones, and I don't know when it was built. I couldn't find a date on it, but it looks to be pretty old in one of the villages. So you can't get in it. And then this was Santiago. It's a statue, and it was a very, very foggy, rainy day, and I just happened to need some support. I was all by myself, and I was just feeling very, very much alone, and I just turned to the left, and here was Santiago, so I knew I was on the right way. Yeah, so there's lots of interesting things to see, and that's why we have 2,000 pictures, which we don't want to bore you with.
So interesting people, just quickly, there's a couple of people. I'm not a big selfie person, so I only took a couple selfies and a whole bunch more I could have taken. But the one on the left is Rosalind, who was hospilatero in one of the albergues, and she was my aunt from another grandmother. I mean, she's just like my aunt, short, talking constantly in Spanish. I told her, I don't understand the words you're saying. She's still talking to me in Spanish, making me eat, telling me to eat. Eat. The one in the middle is Sister Terry, a little chapel that she was at. Again, didn't speak a lick of English, didn't understand a word she said, but so joyful, so happy to have people come into her little chapel and to give them a little miraculous medal. The top right is Padre Thomas. Didn't speak a lick of English, didn't understand a word he said, and his companion Joaquin, he was able to translate for me, but he's a priest, Padre Thomas, a priest, missionary priest, walking in Camino, just really, again, joyful guy, always give you a big hug, kept inviting me to Mass, and celebrated a couple of Masses while we were there. And then Kate from Luxembourg, we walked for a little bit. I learned a lot about Luxembourg I didn't even know anything about. So you never know who you're going to run into. I stopped keeping track of all the countries people were from because I probably hit 20 or 25 and I stopped keeping track and I couldn't keep up anymore. And just quickly, the guy on the right is Mike from Alaska, my brother from another mother, I think. We just struck up a good conversation, walked quite a bit, had a lot in common, and just You never know who you're gonna walk and who you're gonna talk to. But you can meet people from all over the world. It's amazing.
And then this picture over here, I had a very interesting experience of meeting these two young men. They were probably late 20s, early 30s. And one was Muslim and the other was Hindu. And I asked them, where are you from? And they said, oh, we're from the Netherlands. And then, but long story short, they went to a college in the Netherlands and then were grabbed up. Both were discerning whether they should marry their Catholic girlfriends. So they had a Hindu and a Muslim. So I said, let's sit down. Let me buy you a cup of coffee and give you breakfast. It was their first morning and they were really excited. So we had a delightful conversation. And the one in the blue was really, really anxious because he had proposed to the girl and he wasn't sure how it was going to work out and all that. And I had fortuitously just went through something very similar with my daughter marrying a Hindu. So I was able to share that. And I just felt like the Holy Spirit just put me there at the right time to chat with these people and to make an impression on them. So yeah, the people you meet are amazing.
So this is just some pictures from different churches. Again, every little village has a little church. It may or may not be open. I tried to stop in any church that was open, at least say a prayer. The one on the left is the cathedral in Burgos. So that's kind of an example of a grand church. It has these huge altar pieces behind that are just 4 or 5 stories tall, with all these statues of all these different saints. And just huge buildings. The one in the middle is kind of a medium-sized church. That's actually at one of the albergues that was run by the sisters. So a smaller church. And then the one on the right is just a very small chapel. It's just the great diversity. It was so nice to walk into that very simple little chapel that just had stone walls and simple crucifix up there after being. I would go into these cathedrals, and after about 10 minutes, I was overwhelmed, and I had to stop looking at it. It was too much, too beautiful.
And this was our destination, Santiago. And I don't know about when Mike arrived. When I arrived, the sky was that blue. That is the great church, a cathedral, where St. James, the apostle, is actually buried there. And this picture on the left is where he's at his tomb. So you could go in there and pray to him, which was really amazing. You could walk all through the church. You could also go up, way up in the turrets if you wanted to take a tour. And that also looks like that's the inside of the church. Is it St. James is right in the front? Yeah, it's all very, very ornate and very gold, a lot of gold. So yeah, that is like the pinnacle of the trip is reaching Santiago. Full of joy, as Chris Sinkovitz said. It is full of joy.
So now we have a couple of short videos to show you real quick. And then we'll
So this isn't Torres del Rio. This church is Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's one of the only replicas in Spain. It was built in 1172 AD. And my cousin is a flautist, so she wanted to play. And so I think you might be able to hear her playing there.
It should be on. Yeah, just turn it up slightly.
there we go.
So the churches that were open, she would bring her flute out and play, and people, the pilgrims, would come and just sit down and listen to this beautiful, beautiful hymns and whatnot. So it really added another dimension to the pilgrimage.
So this is in the Cathedral of Santiago on the Sunday Mass. This is how they incense the church there. That thing weighs a couple hundred pounds. I've only lost it twice.
Get the ideas, Father. Better have a turkey around there somewhere.
So they do this on Sundays, and if you pay, I think it's like €400, they'll do it for you. But it is, this is the Pilgrim Mass. They do a Pilgrim Mass on Sundays where they kind of send around the pilgrims, they do blessings. In each town, if they have a Mass, they'll usually do a blessing of the pilgrims at the end. This is just very special. If anybody's seen the way, the movie, they've seen this before, but it's really something else to see it in person. Okay, I think you get the idea. So then, I just want to take a minute and just talk about our Caminos really quickly, and then we'll open it up for questions if that sounds okay to everybody. Well, you got a lot of notes there.
Oh, I had to think about it today. It's such a big trip, inside and outside, that it takes a long time to process it. And when you're going on a journey like this, it's very introspective, contemplative. I read something today that kind of struck with me because I didn't want to just go on and on. So I'm just going to read this to you, and this kind of sums up why I was interested in doing this. With the Camino Francis, there's a common bond that unites all of us, and that is a desire to know our human consciousness and God that leads it. Camino Francis provides the opportunity to go beyond the safety of the familiar and into the unknown, and at some point during the way, with nothing but faith to support us. And that is what the Camino does. It doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you need. And that I was given affirmations over and over that God is with me, the Holy Spirit is with me. I only needed to ask Him to be with me and to help me, and He was there. He didn't give me what I wanted, but He did give me what I needed.
Nice. So the common question there is why are you walking the Camino? That's what you ask everybody, that's what you get asked, right? So I have 3 reasons that I walk the Camino. One is the physical challenge. I like a physical challenge. It's a physical challenge. It's a pilgrimage. It's a place to go to a holy site. I learned a lot about St. James in the meantime. And then it was, again, as Amy said, it's very contemplative. It's very introspective. I spent most of my time walking by myself. I really spent the entire morning praying from the time I got up till about noon or so. I was pretty much praying. It wasn't my goal to meet a lot of people. I met a lot of people, but it wasn't my goal. I wasn't going out of my way to meet people. I really was just trying to hold a silent retreat type thing. If you wanted to meet people, you can meet hundreds of people in this journey. But to me, it was very introspective, and the two things that really struck me, one, I always really felt the Lord's presence with me. When I'm climbing hills and things like that, I really felt like He was right there next to me. And the other thing was the blessings, just so many blessings, because there's nothing you have to think about. You don't have to think about where you need to be at 7 o'clock tonight or something like that, other than hopefully a bed somewhere. But it's so simple, it's so routine. Get up, walk. Get cleaned up, go to bed, get up, walk, same thing over again. And it's so simple that you are able to see all the blessings. There was one morning where I must have had 5 or 6 blessings. I saw about 5 or 6 rainbows on this trip. I saw more rainbows. And there's a place to eat, and I didn't have anything, or met someone who told you something. And there's one morning where I had 5 or 6 blessings before I even got to noon. And I just think we're so busy in our lives. We have these blessings all the time. We just don't even notice them because we're too busy. So I try to focus a little bit more on some of the blessings that I have and be a little more grateful, which is one of the lessons I learned from this. But so the picture on the left is 0 kilometer pillar at Finisterre. That's the lighthouse in the background. And I think you're at a 10 kilometer to the end, because it counts off the kilometers. It don't always seem like they agree. It seems like, wait a second, that's a bigger number than the last one. I'm not going the right way.
It's a miracle.
But it's kind of interesting to follow that, and you kind of, you start now, it's like 780. Okay, I'm under 700. Okay, now I'm down to 100. It's pretty amazing. Anyhow, questions? Anybody have any questions?
You were there during the floods in Spain. Didn't they have a lot of rain?
Yeah, I have one video where there was 50-mile-an-hour winds coming straight at me and rain, and we didn't get any flooding, but it rained a lot, and the wind was very strong. Got very tired by the end. You get soaked. Once you're soaked, you're soaked. You can't get more soaked than soaked. So,
Did you have moments of doubt that you maybe shouldn't have done this or might not finish? You got injured, didn't you?
I did. There's of all the days that I walked, one day I didn't walk. I had some shin splints, and I walked 20 miles with shin splints, and by the end of the day, I said I can't walk the next day. So I took a bus for the next 20 miles, and then I finished it after that. After I got into the routine and probably walked a week or two, I felt like I could do it as long as I didn't injure myself. And there were people that injured themselves. They got bad blisters or injuries. I had a knee that was bothering me, so I got some support before I left. Once I felt if I didn't get injured, I could finish it. I don't know how you felt.
Yeah, I ended up with some stress fractures in my right foot, and that was about 2.5 to 3 weeks in. I didn't know it at the time. I just knew my foot was hurting constantly, and then I would finish the day, and it was just swollen up like a balloon. So I said, I'm not stopping, because I don't know that I'll ever be able to get back here again, because God gave me this time, and I just had this in my brain that I was going to finish no matter what. So I would walk for several hours in a lot of pain in my right foot. I offered it all up, and by the 3rd hour, I didn't feel it anymore.
The only time I had a doubt was actually before I started the first inning. I was in a hotel room. I woke up in the middle of the night because I had to make a decision. Am I going over the mountain or am I going around the mountain? And I told myself at that point, I'm going over the mountain. So that was the only time I had doubt. was where I was gonna, because I was scared that if I injured myself going up that mountain, it'd be a miserable next 5 or 6 weeks. But fortunately, I didn't get over the mountain without any real trouble.
How many miles a day did you do? About 25?
No, average, to do this in the time frame that I did it, so it was 33 days. So you average about 15 or 16 miles a day. The most I walked in a day was, I'd say the most I walked in a day, the most I walked on the trail was 20 miles, but every time I got to where I got, I go sightseeing, I go look, see what's there. So even when I took a rest day, I walked 20 miles on the day I rested. Not much of a rest. I got statistics on what I did total, but about 15 or 16 miles on the trail, but probably 20 plus if you talk about all the walking runs, depending on the size of the city.
We did, when we were on a pioneer trip, we did 110 miles in a week. So that's what? 10, 12, 15, about the same, I think, about 15 miles a day.
This Camino Francis is set up, you can do it in 8 weeks, 10 weeks. You can do just portions of it. You don't have to do 15 to 20 miles a day. I also did probably way too many miles per day, but I was had a short time frame to finish it, and I really wanted to finish it. So you can also go as supported as you need. You can go with tour groups that will have you just walk 10K a day, which would be about 6.2 miles a day, or you could go up to 10 to 15 miles a day. So just some stats. So the planned trail for what I did walking days was 554 miles total. My phone said I walked 654 miles total, 2,065 floors, and 1,472,000 steps. Way in the back.
What's something you packed that you wish you didn't, and what's something you didn't pack that you wish you did?
Okay, so I packed a rechargeable phone charger. Like if my phone would go dead, and then I could charge it while I was out on the trail. And I regretted that because it was heavy. And I also packed clothing that I thought I might need. I ended up throwing it out. I had 2 outfits. That was it for the entire 35 days.
There's very little I took that I didn't use. I had a actual compass I took that I never used, but that's the only way to announce or so. Everything else I pretty much used. You know, I did buy a bottle of chlorhexidine because, you know, using multiple showers, even though you're wearing sandals, I just wanted to have that available in case I had any sign of a fungal infection on my feet or something like that. I carried that for a long time and ended up leaving it there. But there wasn't anything, well, what I would have liked to have was a real raincoat. I had a rain shell that I had, and every time it rained, I got wet. I couldn't understand why, and I held it up to the light one time and I could see through it. I threw that away. Fortunately, it wasn't good. I had a poncho if it was going to rain again, but that was the only thing which I brought a different rain jacket.
I agree. I also brought the wrong rain jacket. A rain jacket is something you need to invest your money in and not be afraid to spend the money on a good rain jacket.
So I would say we got rain probably, I got rain probably 15 days. A pretty good rain, not just a sprinkle, pretty good rain. And there were times where the trail was mud and you had to figure out a way around the puddles and things like that. But your feet were soaked by that point anyway, so. Chris.
Footwear choice?
That's what I wore, Keens. I'm still wearing them. I had to replace the insoles. I got them wet and I pulled the insoles out to dry them. And as I was packing up, I put them on the floor under a chair and I left without them when I was walking. I said, you feel funny today. The guy passed me by and goes, "Are you the one that left your insoles back?" So anyways, I bought a pair of gel ones to replace them, which were terrible. We got blisters from that, so I replaced those with some better ones, and it was fine for the rest of the trip. But I was looking at Keens, or Obaz is another one I think a lot of people had. But you gotta have, if you don't have good shoes, it's gonna be a miserable trip. There's places you could buy good shoes on the trail, but you want them big. I wish I had another half size on mine, because coming down some of the hills, my toes were hitting the front of the shoe, even though I tightened them up as much as I could. Never really caused a real problem, but I know some people were losing toenails.
Yeah, I think also with those shoes, it is a very individualized choice. So you would probably do well to go to like a store like REI or a really good shoe store and just tell them what you're going to do, because you need that support. I actually replaced my shoes probably 2.5 weeks into the trip, because I felt like maybe that was the problem that was hurting my foot. I had a pair of Ultras, and they're trail runners, which are actually for a trail. And they never gave me any problems, but I think they didn't give me enough support. So I actually bought a pair of hiking boots, and I was very happy with those from then on out.
It is a debate whether you want hiking boots or hiking
Yeah.
shoes. A lot of people were wearing tennis shoes and things like that, trail shoes and stuff. That seemed crazy to me. I want more support. I did go with a hiking boot. I went with a hiking shoe. And then I also had a pair of sandals that I could wear, Keen sandals that I could wear. I could hike in those if I had to, if it was relatively flat ground. So those were the two shoes. I kind of wanted a different pair of shoes at night, let my feet dry out, things like that.
Any inspirational stories about St. James? This is St. James the Great, not the Lesser, right? This was the Roman Empire when they walked. Yes.
Okay.
That's the first section. Rome had to have that section.
Yeah.
Oh, Spain, yeah.
I don't know that he walked it.
Yeah, I don't know that he walked it.
Oh, is that right?
So the legend is that he was beheaded, and somebody found a set of bones of a beheaded, and they think that's St. James, and so they took him into the city where he spent time and built the cathedral there. So they're not even absolutely sure that's St. James.
So are you carrying all, you got a backpack,
Yeah.
and your sleeping bag on your back too, right? And
Yeah,
what was the weight?
Pardon?
What was the weight?
My pack with water was probably 23 to 25 pounds.
And mine was 15 when I started, and it was probably more like 13 when I finished. It felt like 15, like by a half a day. By the end of the trip, your body adapts. It's an amazing, amazing machine, and it does adapt. So
That's the pack I used, but obviously it's much lighter than anything in it.
I actually put a weight in mine to, if anybody wanted to lift it, they could see actually how heavy it actually was to carry that. But you'd be surprised, you don't really need very much. You think you need all these things, and that was a big takeaway for me, was that, oh, I gotta have this, and I have this, and I gotta make sure I have this, and what if I get a blister? You don't need all these things. You realize that.
There are services that will take your luggage, so if you didn't want to carry anything except the water bottle and a small pack, there are services that will take, it's like €4 for them to transport your luggage to the next location. You just gotta know where you're gonna be that night, that's when they drop it off. I didn't do that, so a lot of people did that, which, that's fine. My sister did the Camino a couple of years ago, and that's how she did it. So,
I was just wondering, how much of it is, or is any of it walking along the road with cars going by and trucks?
yes.
Yeah.
A lot of it?
Some of it. Yeah, I mean, the first day uphill is all on the road. And they drive fast on these hills. I mean, it's kind of amazing, and they're not very wide. And through the cities is another place. The roads are very narrow in the city, where you gotta let them by. I mean, that kind of a thing, because you're walking on the roads,
It's
you're
not like
driving on the road. So, But a lot of times the trail is separate along the road, but there are times where you are walking on the road.
There was even one point where we walked all the way around an airport coming into Burgos. It was very industrialized, and somebody asked, did you ever have a moment when you didn't want to do this anymore? That was that day when I didn't want to, because I felt like I was just walking in Detroit and around a city, and I'm like, where's the inspiration in this? Brenda?
I wonder how you trained and if you felt like you did the right thing or you would recommend something different for someone else.
I think it's a really individualized thing to answer. It kind of depends on your level of fitness where you are right now. I would definitely recommend walking 5 to 10 miles every day. And once you have that down and feel really good with that, I would start walking 5 to 10 miles with a backpack every day, because it is definitely a physical activity. I think people underestimate the physicality of it. I don't know whether it was me or I do marathons. I'm a marathoner. I run a lot, and it was hard for me. It made my marathons look easy. Yeah.
So I do a lot of walking. For me to walk 5 miles is not a big deal. I walked with a pack all the time for a few months before I went, just to be sure wanted to be sure the pack worked for me too. My test was about a week before I was going to go. I walked 18 miles. I walked 45 miles in 3 days. And that was kind of my test. I wanted to see if anything broke. Because again, my knee was bothering me. I wanted to be sure it was holding up. And if I could do that, then I know I'm ready. But honestly, you never know you're going to be ready. I mean, some of these hills coming down, sometimes it's rocks where you gotta, when I see people jumping down these rocks, I'm like, you're not going to be able to do that for 5 weeks. Stop doing that. I had sticks, so I could lower myself down. I would definitely say you want sticks. And you're always going to sit there and go, I'm not sure I'm ready. I'm not sure I can do this. I don't think anybody goes and says, piece of cake. You're going to have doubts until you get a few days and you get in the routine and you realize, as long as I stay healthy, this is not going to be a problem. I never felt like I couldn't do it. I could have walked more each day if I wanted to. I just chose not to because I wanted to see what was at the destination. I wanted to have some time to walk around and find a church and things like
I think that's the beauty of it too, is to not plan it too much, so that if you have a good day when you get up and you're like, oh, I'm not walking 15 miles today. You just stay another day where you're at, and then go on the next day when you're feeling better and you have more energy. So as far as fitness, I would definitely start walking if you're planning to do that in the next 6 months, every day walk.
Do hills?
Yeah, hills are definitely once or twice a week, do some hills, because there's quite a bit of hill climbing. Yeah, if you can find, there's a lot of hills out in this area.
That's the other test I did. I went down to Kellogg Forest where there's that one hill, and I walked up and down and up and down and up and down 10 or 15 times. It was a 100-foot elevation. The first day is 3,600 feet change. You're going to go up 3,600 and come back down a little bit. That's the only place I could find it with a real hill right around here without going up to Traverse City and doing the dunes or something. But you have to try hills too, going up and coming down, because to me, coming down the hill is worse than going up. I'd rather go up a hill. But somebody gave me some great advice, which I followed, and I found it to be very helpful. It said, go up slow, come down slow. So I just took my time, just set my pace, and I just kept going. And you don't have to hurry. The hilltop's still going to be there when you get there. So just take your time to coming down. Again, I saw people running down these hills, and it's just like, you're not going to do that a couple weeks from now, I don't think. So I went down. Sometimes I would actually do the switchbacks coming down these hills because it was It was too much coming down. Eric had a question for you.
Were there any local Catholic customs that you were unfamiliar with that you kind of discovered?
Yeah, they say their mass is in Spanish.
I found Friday nights were, Catholic masses on Friday nights were an opportunity for the community to come together. So they would come to mass, the churches would be packed on Friday nights. And I'm like, why is it not busy like this on Sunday? It was Friday nights, they would come out, they would be all dressed up, people would be all decked up, the men and the women. And then after they have the mass, they all go out to dinner, or they play cards, or they do something together. So that was like a source of community. That's one thing I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, the nightlife is very lively on the weekends, especially Fridays and Saturdays. Whole families are out well after dark, in the cafes, or all have the tables outside. It's just, I love that part of it, that European part of it. I mean, there were some things unique in the churches. One of the things I noticed that I couldn't understand, I'm still not sure I understand it, is they had a crucified Jesus in a glass casket in almost every church I went into. And apparently it's something that they do during Holy Week. They do something with it and they keep it out otherwise. But I never saw anything like that because Jesus really didn't spend much time in the tomb. But they got him in the tomb perpetually, kind of. That was, and the other thing is that Mary is very, very prominent there. So there's a lot of Santa Maria churches, and Mary's very high up in the altar pieces and things like that. I can't think of any.
She doesn't look like our Mary either. She's usually decked out in very ornate hats and capes and things like that. She looks very different than what we think of when we think of Mary.
Yeah, the churches have a lot of different Marys. So they have Mother of Sorrows, Mary, and they have her with Jesus crucified and things. So it's a lot of different types of Marys as well.
They've been at it.
Pardon?
They've been at it.
They've been at it longer, yeah. Yeah, I saw one church there had celebrated its millennial anniversary, so it's been around 1,000 years.
How many pairs of socks did you take? To my recollection, you'd probably be carrying your whole patch full of socks.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, go ahead. So at the albergates, they typically have hand wash stations so you can wash your clothes, because you only take so many clothes that you're gonna have to wash down there.
Yeah.
So I was washing clothes about every second or third day. I took essentially 3 pairs of socks, and I wore 2 socks. I wore a pair of toe socks and another pair of socks over those each day.
Okay.
And then, so I had to do a wash every second or third day, typically. So these pants are what I took. I just took 2 of the shorts and just one of the legs. And I wore shorts most of the time, and then a few pairs of shirts. So you don't need a lot of clothes, but the less clothes you have, the more wash you got to do.
How would your socks dry? Would they dry overnight?
Sometimes they didn't.
Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they have washers and dryers there, or I got to the point where I was tired of hand washing, especially because it was raining towards the second half and stuff just wasn't drying. So I would find the laundromat and go to the laundromat and get it all done in an hour or so. Wash everything together, dry everything together. I shrunk some clothes that way.
Speaking other languages, I'm sorry, English versus, did you speak Spanish, for example?
I studied it for 6 months using Mango, but it was useless to me other than me saying a couple of key words to make my point, because they speak so fast, there's just no way to understand it.
I don't speak Spanish. Val here speaks very good Spanish. So while she was with us, she would frequently ask what we needed. But after she left, it was kind of like you were forced to learn different things to say. There was one day when I walked with these Spanish twin men from Spain, and for some reason, this guy thought it was his job to teach me Spanish and then quiz me on it. So he would be rattling off phrases and words, and then he'd ask me to repeat, and then after a while, I was starting to get like anxious because he was like, "No, I'm going to ask you again tomorrow." And I'm like, "Oh, I hope I don't see him." Sure enough, I could see him the next day, and he would speak to me in Spanish, but I was so, like when you're a kid, they want you to remember something. I remember because I knew he was going to ask me. But you do need to know a little bit of Spanish, but there also is an app that will translate for you. And technology is amazing sometimes.
Some people speak English or understand some English, but a lot don't. So you can't count on them understanding English, that's for sure. But you can typically make your point. What always got me is when they would ask me, something like $2.75. It's like, I don't know what you just said. How much do I owe? Here's 20, tell me. And you try to get it, or they'll write it down. The numbers are the same, right? So,
What's the coldest it got?
how cold? The coldest was upper 30s, lower 40s. A lot of times in the morning. It was in the nice good day. It was warmer at the beginning, and then it got cooler, and then it got warm again. I mean, when you go up in the hills, it gets pretty chilly. But I would say that's kind of what the temperature range was then. A lot depended on whether the sun was out, things like that.
Right, morning's definitely cold. So you would just put all your clothes on, your backpack would be lighter. So you're way in the back.
Would you go again?
Absolutely. I'm planning to go again. I am just waiting for that aha moment. This is when I'm going to do it. I'm hoping that I can take my husband with me this time. And if he doesn't do it, I'm going to nail Val to do it. And I do want to speak with, if you're going to do it with somebody, make sure you do it with somebody you know really, really well. I just learned that from experience that, I love my cousin, but we decided we were very different travelers and we had very different goals. So it made a very different experience for us.
Would you do a different route or would you do the same?
I would do the Camino Francis again. This time I would take a course in Middle Age history and maybe church history before I did it. And I've already started learning more about it so that the next time I go back, I'll be able to take in more.
Mike, would you go again?
Or I go in a heartbeat. I leave tomorrow.
Same route?
Huh?
Same route?
Well, I'll do them all eventually. I met a guy that said he walked it 30 times.
Wow.
And most of the people, again, some resources, the apps are good, but if anybody's really thinking about walking this, you want to join the American Pilgrims of the Camino. They have local chapters. The closest one I've been involved with is in South Bend. But those guys have walked it a couple times and they have a lot of good advice. They've walked different routes. But after the Francés, probably the Portuguese is the next, and then probably Primitivo is another one. And a lot of people said they were going to walk or had walked before. And they all have different, like you said, they're not as supported, I don't think, and less tourists, though, too. I mean, it's going to be less people on the travel as well.
Seasonality.
You're not thinking-
Seasonality, go at the same time of year.
I would never go in the summer.
Right.
I think it would be, I can't imagine walking this in the summer. There were some days where I was sweating like crazy. This was in fall. So I would never walk it in the summer. The winter is not supposed to be great because some of the mountains get pretty treacherous or can get closed. So it's really either spring or fall. And both times you're going to get some rain. There's more crops that are ready to scavenge in the fall, though.
October was really a nice month, late September, October, because you had kind of cooler days, but sunny. You would get some rain occasionally, but it was just beautiful. Just a beautiful time and less populated. So there weren't as many people on the trail, which was really nice. Yeah.
Spaniards were friendly to Americans.
Extremely friendly. I had no troubles.
No moments.
I had no, I was in Italy earlier in the year and did not have such a wonderful experience being in Italy. And then going to Spain, I was fully expecting sort of the same thing, and I was just blown away by how kind the people are, how generous they are, and how much they do want you to be there, despite what media tells you. Media tells you they don't want the tourists there, but we're pilgrims, we weren't tourists.
Right, you're on a tour, you're not a.
My experience with the old cathedrals, I'm talking old, anything before the 1500s, okay? They were dark and dingy. Was that your experience or not?
And the men
I
were
said
always
dingy is
outside.
probably the wrong word. They're just dark because they
Yeah.
didn't have any way of, they didn't have a way of lighting these things very well except for candles.
Yeah, they don't, they are fairly dark, they're fairly chilly. The thing that always struck me, especially with some of these bigger churches and cathedral, is it just was imagining how many people have worshipped in this building over all these centuries. And the other thing is, these people that lived around farmlands and simple lives, tradespeople and things like that, to live in their very humble abodes. And then they come in and walk into some of these cathedrals. I mean, it's got to be like walking into heaven. So, I mean, that's the thing that struck me, is just the beauty of it, the beauty of some of these cathedrals. Yes, Diane.
When we were in Italy, the men were outside smoking and joking, and all the women with their babushkas on were in church. They didn't go in, the men did not go in.
Well, there were men in there. There's more women in the churches. A lot of the pilgrim masses in the evening, there's a lot of locals that are typically there. There are some men, mostly women, I would say. And they do smoke. The Spaniards, they don't do the vaping much, but they do a lot of cigarettes. It really surprised me how much smoking they do.
Did you buy a round trip ticket and you knew you needed to get done before you were supposed to fly? You didn't do an open ended. What'd you do, Mike?
No, so my trip was 45 days from flight to flight. I flew into Madrid, and then I took another plane to Pamplona, and then I took a bus to St. John. When I got to Santiago, I walked to the shore, I took a bus back to Santiago, I took a train to Madrid to fly out of Madrid again. So actually, after I walked to Santiago, then walked to the shore and went back to Santiago, I had about 3 days in Santiago to just hang out. I wanted to be sure and hit this mass where they did the incense on the Sunday, and it wouldn't have worked out otherwise. So that's why I had some extra time, but not too much extra time. But some people had open-ended. They weren't sure they were going to be able to do the whole thing, and so they did have open-ended. A lot of people changed their plans. They decided they wanted to walk more, so they tried to stay longer. So I would say that most people probably have kind of a fixed date. And as long as you're not injured and you're reasonable, it's not a problem. And again, if something goes awry, you can always grab a taxi. Taxis are really easy, buses are easy. It's really easy to navigate through Spain. So it's not a problem if something goes wrong.
I flew into Barcelona. I bought a round trip ticket. I spent 3 days in Barcelona because I wanted to see Familia Sagrada, which I was not able to get into. It's very, very hard to get into that church. You have to book it months ahead. And then we took a train. Val and I and Ingrid took a train to Pamplona. And from Pamplona, we took a taxi to St. Jean de Port, walked to Santiago. In between there, I had to taxi between two large cities because my cousin was really struggling. So we took some days and taxied that one day. And then I flew out of Santiago back to Barcelona. So, and that was all set up ahead of time, along with all my accommodations. With my cousin, she wanted everything set out, and I went along with it because I said I guess that's how it's supposed to do. So I had, 2 weeks before we started the trip, I sat down and did booking.com for 35 nights. But as you all know, those plans, that's my plan and her plan, that was not God's plan. So a lot of those bookings were just, I had to cancel and reschedule and do different things, so. All right, I'm seeing the yawnings. I'm thinking we should wind it down.
The last thing I want to say is that, again, I mentioned the Camino, the American Pilgrims of the Camino. So that South Bend group is going to have a Camino 101 on January 19th. If anybody's interested, I got a couple flyers up here. If you're seriously thinking about walking it, it's a great place to start to get some more information. But that's going to be at South Bend.
Thank you.
Thank you.